We would just love to hear, you can drop this in the chat, you can just say it out loud. Again, there's no real structure to this. We just really wanted to hear from you folks, what's working, and maybe if we did a survey, we have some thoughts on that we can share a little later. But if there's anything specific that you would love to talk about, who would like to go first today?
I would double click on that just a little bit. And there were some great ideas that you guys shared that I saw people get a little bit curious about. So I'm just going to, I took some notes on where I saw the eyebrows raised a little bit. Like, I want to double click on that. So Gerald, you were talking about your hybrid convention and that may continue on. So I wonder if there's some question, and several of you guys did virtual events. And you probably had some man, that part was really great. And some oh, we're never going to do that again. So there are probably some lessons learned there. So what if we take a minute and just, put all the thinking in the room around the events, especially since some of you have those coming up. And then the other place where I heard some unification was, this has been a disruptive year. There's some things that we want to take into the next years with us, but what does that new disruption really look like? And so I think if maybe we can spend a few minutes on those two topics, and then we can go wherever you guys want to go from there. So let's talk about events. What went well, what didn't go well? What's hybrid look like when you're going to do it ongoing? I'm curious.
Unfortunately, haven't had ours yet, so I don't have any tips as of yet. I know that we have our regional conference, our regional conventions. They have been in the hybrid format as well, but they're not going through our particular vendor that we're using. We used a vendor called Global Design Interactive, and so they've been able to provide us a complete replica of the convention center. Through that, we'll be able to do our virtual seminars, what we call our Alpha University workshop sessions. So we'll be able to we have all those pre-recorded. As we've heard that doing anything live could crash systems, and a few of our regional events have crashed because they have done live events. So we literally took that down to zero. So everything that'll be on the platform will be pre-recorded. We're excited to be working with around 31 sponsors, and then we have about 70 vendors that'll be tabling there and also virtually. So we had a chance to put together a virtual preview for them on the 1st of July with our lead technician, and really walk them through the platform, show them their virtual exhibit booths and how those virtual network rooms look and the functionality there. So from the looks of it, we think it's going to be a very successful endeavor. Of course, it was very pricey when you look at that, kind of bringing on that kind of thing, but we think it could be a good opportunity for those members that in the past haven't been able to travel to General Convention. Mm-hmm. They can still be on the floor. We're going to have live cameras rolling in certain areas of the convention center as well, so they can really feel like they're there. So I would think that this new environment of us being kind of stuck at home and kind of remote may have created a new avenue for us. So it's going to be great.
I can share what didn't go well with virtual events. So this was actually on the fraternity side, but we learned from them and have not tried to do it on the foundation side. So at our January conference, we had over 1,000 participants. So Zoom actually made an expansion for us to where they could put that many people into breakout rooms. And we had done pre-scheduled breakout rooms with the emails that people registered with. Unfortunately, those are not the emails that those people had for their Zoom accounts. So when we went to put everyone into breakout rooms, it was just a hot mess. And some people went and some people didn't. And we've got 1,000 people that are just sitting there what's going on? And we just ended up calling it for that night, not doing breakout groups, sent an email that was thanks for everyone's patience. Most people hung out for 20 minutes. What am I supposed to be doing? But it was just really awkward and uncomfortable. Unfortunately, we did have some donors on, but they understood the circumstances and everything. But if you are doing large groups with breakout rooms, I just highly discourage trying to pre-sort based on registration emails. You need to sort after you actually already have them in the session. So that was something that did not go well.
I just got back from 2 back-to-back conferences in person. It's the first time that I've been at a conference in person in 15 months. I have to say it was really magical to be around people again. Um, and they were very different. One had about 650 people, and it felt like the pace was just a little bit slower. People were excited to connect. And so you were able to have really meaningful conversations. And the second one, 3,300 people, did not feel like the pace was slow at all. But they did something that was really interesting that I'm going to take forward in an event that we're doing at the end of the year. They did a recap at the end of the day for those that weren't able to attend because they had a hybrid thing, Gerald, similar to what you were talking about. And it was like the top 3 things that we talked about today. And then I had some B-roll of, people walking around the exhibit floor or B-roll of the big kind of main stage. And it went out to everybody on their list. So it wasn't just people that potentially registered for this potential convention, but just literally everyone is an engagement or stewardship piece. And I had like 3 or 4 people send it to me and go, we should think about doing this for our upcoming event. And I was like, it's a really great idea. So give them a taste, even if they're not even able to participate virtually, just like, hey, we're thinking about you. Sorry you can't be here, but we're going to give you a taste of it. So that's my story from the road. What about donor events? So that's the other thing that I don't really mean donor events. I mean donor meetings. That was the other thing that kind of came up as we were talking about virtual. Is there anything that we could take away from each other on either, what that donor conversation looks like on Zoom? It sounded like several of you were able to get some larger gifts in. What does stewardship look like for you on Zoom? Versus meeting face to face. Just curious what you guys have tried and what's working well, what maybe isn't working well. And then I have another question after that.
Discovery is working really well for us on Zoom. But beyond that, we haven't had much luck. And I don't know if that's just, we have a pretty young advancement team. So there were a few people who we had kind of advanced relationships with, and they were comfortable with Zoom, and we were able to close out those gifts. But it was kind of like they already knew the ask was coming. Otherwise, our team hasn't been able to move people kind of out of discovery, I would say, via Zoom. So I don't know if anyone's had any success with that kind of transition over Zoom and wants to share.
I can just speak anecdotally, Katie. We did up another roundtable a few months back with higher ed that we work with, and they felt that they were having meaningful engagements through Zoom, and they were not sure that was going to be the case. A number of the universities did well raising funds, when they were at that stage. That interaction they felt was not lacking much. It was still meaningful to be on the Zoom. So I don't know how everybody else has done, but we've seen success with that too.
Anybody else want to chime in?
Yeah, I kind of brought this up when I did my introduction, and kind of playing off what you said, Katie. I'm not really making asks over Zoom with my donors. What I'm mostly doing is just checking in, saying hello, and having those conversations that we'd probably have either over the phone or if I was traveling in their area. I've got about 10 to 12 older gentlemen that don't get out much or can't get out much. So just getting to talk to someone over or Zoom is like the highlight of their day. So it's more of a stewardship piece than anything, I think, for us.
Yeah, that's great. That has a benefit right down the road. If they feel valued and stewarded, they're going to give. It doesn't necessarily always have to have the ask front and center.
I was just going to add too, we actually have had success making asks over Zoom. I mean, even from one donor that I work with, cultivation to ask, like within a very short period of time. And our organization also turned 150 years old in 2020. And so we had a huge giving campaign around that Laurel on the call actually led, and several of us made asks to help support that effort as well, whether it was just a phone call, Zoom, whatever, but they worked out really well.
How are you identifying, thanks for sharing that, Lindsay. How are you identifying who to reach out to, and then kind of what's your process for that? Since you've been successful in that, do you have a certain stages that you're walking folks through as well?
Yeah, they're really people that we've identified in our portfolios who we think were in the case of fall 2020 ready for those asks. And then just as we're planning ahead for this next year as well, people who have been cultivated and are ready for that next ask.
Just want to tell the team, thank you all for providing this. I want to say it was Nick that may have mentioned earlier, he started last June 1st. My first day was June 22nd of last year as well. So I'm right there with you, my brother. And I think what was very unique about me coming on board for my fraternity was I was the first CDO within my position. So really having to create that foundation. So really hearing these conversations are perfect because we're starting to now transition into that portion to where we really want to start directly working with our donor engagement. Our focus since I've been in the role has really been focused on our partnerships, more so from a business strategy, kind of corporate foundational partners from that vantage point. So this has been great. Thank you all.
I'll just chime in too on the, we are starting to see, at least in our higher clients, more efficiency in the major gift process because you're not having to go sit and meet and dinners or lunch or golf or whatever the thing is, and they understand like why you're getting on a Zoom call. So it's just, I'm getting on to give you an update and then talk about, how you can participate. And again, it's not the first call, it's something that has been cultivated over time. And so that's been interesting to watch, just an observation. And then the other you guys have already hit on, the stewardship aspect of just being able to connect with people in this crazy time. And you're not just connecting with them in like a random environment. I mean, hey, welcome to my home. And you may have, kids coming in and out if that's the stage of life you're in. And so there's a more authentic, I think, human connection that's happened during this season. Anything else you guys are curious on, double clicking with each other that you heard either in introductions or in the conversation so far?
Well, I guess with virtual events, has anyone had any luck? I've been wondering about like a different platform outside of Zoom that would allow donors to donate during their experience as a virtual participant, especially, I mean, we're not going to change our convention this year because it's in 2 weeks, but like Gerald said, for future conventions, we'll definitely still have a virtual component. And I would love for that to like have a donate option within the platform. Has anybody heard of anything like that or has done something along those lines?
I could tell you something that we have just signed up for. I have not done it. We have not hosted this event. We've heard of other charities doing it, but there's a poker tournament that our fraternity used to run on local levels. There's a group called Faded Spade that has done this virtually, and the table actually looks pretty decent, but you could have sponsors on the table, and then during the tournament, as people buy more chips, they're actually donating, and it's all through their system. I don't believe they do payment processing through the system, but essentially to like get $25 more in chips, you're agreeing to make a pledge or whatever it may be, and then it's on us to follow up. But that's, if it's something your group is interested in, I'm happy to make the introduction.
Katie, I'm speaking a little bit about something I know nothing about, so I don't even know if this is going to be relative, but for CAP, with our conventions in the past, we've used the Whova app. And what I don't entirely know is, I know that those who go to convention, we've tried to get away from the expensive cost of printed program. So with the Whova app, you get the whole schedule, but we were able to have a giving function through that. Now, our convention, our next one's not until 2022. So our 2020 convention got nixed with COVID, and we had a virtual business meeting, but we didn't run Whova during that time. I'd be happy to get more information from our communications department though, because it has a lot of functionality. And I do hope going forward that we will invite more of our membership to our convention virtually, where in the past it was just if you were there in person, you were able to experience it. But we do have a really large fundraising effort at our conventions and would love to open it up to those at home who are following along. We always would send emails, give online if you can't be there with us, but you might research Whova. I think it's WHOVA. Lindsay, does that sound right? So, but a lot of functions, and I don't think we were using it to its max back in 2018, but even then it worked well.
Any other recommendations? Any other curious questions that you just want to know from your peers? We've got a couple of other questions that came in through the survey, but just want to make sure that you've been able to double click on the things that were of interest to you. All right. If anything comes up, don't hesitate to put it in the chat. How many of you read the Fundraising Effectiveness Project report? It comes out on a quarterly basis and just kind of gives you a beat on the trends. It's okay if you don't. So the key things that we saw coming out of last year, and I'm just curious if this is what you experienced too. So donors and dollars were up. So did everybody in the call kind of have that same experience? Yeah. Looks like it. But we still have a retention problem. Is that, and it was declined across the board, all the different verticals. Curious if that is what you guys are seeing as well. Is your retention same? We're doing fine. We're not doing so great. We want to work on that. I see a lot of this kind of the same. All right.
Yeah. What I've experienced with annual giving at Kappa, it's kind of across the board. Our leadership annual giving donors, our retention rate's really healthy, but it's kind of those donors who give $25 to $150. It's just a really big drop off there.
Yeah.
And of course, they're not getting the more personal stewardship touches. We try to do the best we can, but when you're talking about the masses and in the thousands, we're sending them impact on how their gift is making a difference. But yes, that's definitely our trend. We had a tremendous number of first-time donors last year, and a lot of that had to do with our big Founders Day Giving Challenge around our sesquicentennial. And that's one of our big challenges this year, right, is to try and keep them in the fold and renew their giving. But
yeah,
that's a great point, Laurel, you bring up, because that's something we've been working with our clients, whether Greek, higher ed, mission driven. You saw such an influx of new donors. Now you have two kind of questions. Who are they and how can I get them to renew? But then also, how do you adequately budget and forecast, right? For particularly annual fund where mail costs money. And you have X amount of new donors. Like, how do you know which are more likely to renew than not? So you can appropriately spend on mail and get a decent ROI back, right? So I think that's something is to understand who these people are. Why'd they come on, particularly the new ones? What was it? And double down on that message and strengthen their understanding of what that you're actually doing with their gift to get that second gift, and the job's never done, right? So I think it's just really understanding like what the opportunity is versus what were kind of the really the one-offs. And in many cases we're talking about them as if it's a disaster donor, right? That came on last year for one reason or another. They're supporting various causes, but maybe they're not going to give again. Now that we're kind of back to a sense of normalcy. So I think that's something to consider, understanding who you got on board last year.
And Ryan, to hitchhike up that, I mean, can you unpack a little bit of, if you don't send a mail, what are we advising clients to do? Because we've got some channel preferences built into the platform which we've seen some great success with. Those folks that don't respond to mail, they respond to other ways. Can you unpack that a little bit for everybody?
Well, I mean, I think it's important to understand channel preferences, and you can start by just looking at where the gift came into your organization. That alone will help you understand where to communicate with them. And so knowing where you're going to get their attention, right? They need to see it to actually respond to it. So that's something just by looking at where these people came on, whether it was from a gift or by signing up for something, what the channel was. And also I think particularly what we do, and I've been doing this for years, is rather than just a lie bunt list, we focus on those that are about to lapse. Who are your people that haven't made a gift in 11 to 12 months, and setting up some sort of special outreach. If they're mid level donors, just under major, maybe you personally reach out to them, pick up the phone, write a handwritten note. If they're your annual fund, set up some sort of, and if this is up to you, either cultivation or stewardship track, or just, hey, can you renew? You know, I take the approach of stewardship, but at that lower annual level, you may want to just say, hey, time to make a gift again and renew your support. But those are really, rather than just looking at a lie bunt list, which it's not based on timing, right? This is when you look at every month who's about to lapse, that's really focused and it's behavioral. So let's get them feeling good, or remind them at the very least to make another gift.
Brian, one thing that we've done to kind of combat that, so at the beginning of each year, I try to identify a student to just record a video for me. And I kind of coach them on a script, but I also ask them to just like include something different in them, that something personal to their experience in it. And then we started doing your giving anniversary. We, of course, exclude our monthly donors so they don't get the same email 12 times, but we do a giving anniversary email, just kind of, hey, a year ago, it's a month, we send it by the month. So a month ago, this last year, you donated, here's a thank you message. And essentially just we hope that you'll give again this year type of thing. So that's actually been really successful for us, especially for those lower level donors. You know, they get a message from a student that they're actually impacting and they really like it. So
Yeah, that's great. I'd done that before too with the anniversaries, right? Not so subtle. Well, I guess it's somewhat subtle to say, hey, that's the time of year again, but you are thanking them. So I think that's appreciated, but I'm glad to hear you've had success with that.
This is where my disruptor hat kind of comes on. And I think someone called that out at the beginning of our conversation too. It's just, what can we do to be disruptive as we think about the rest of the year and on a go forward basis. But getting a good beat of what's happening in your file, I think we all probably do that. We know who our donors' dollars are, where they're coming from, what our retention rates are, you know, where people are in that donor journey. The question that I always ask myself now is like, how can I move someone when they've just come in potentially as a new donor? Are they just testing me? Is it a test gift, or do they have a high affinity with our organization? Maybe they have the capacity to give and are giving to other organizations like mine. They just aren't giving to me yet in that way, but they could, just because of how they're wired, to be able to get some predictive information about them. So that first and third party data kind of coming together to allow us to have a better conversation with a donor, and then inviting them to opt in at a different level, whether it's opting into a monthly donor or going ahead and giving that mid-level gift, or, you know, sometimes that major gift. I just wonder if there are things that we could be doing to get to that cultivation point faster. I grew up in fundraising where we right or wrong at the time, you know, they would give through the mail. We'd wait for them to make the $500 or $1,000 gift, and we'd be like, oh, there's a mid-level donor prospect. Let's talk to them differently. Or if they gave the $10,000 gift, and and so it was more of a reactive process than a proactive process. And we just have access. That was 20 years ago. So we have access to so much more data now to help us be more, I think, efficient and effective fundraisers, but also to be at the heart of where the donor is, understanding their case for support and where they are in their own donor journey, to invite them into something that they're passionate about supporting. And so I'm just curious if what you guys are using or doing to do the same thing, if you are blending first and third party data, and what you found really important, and, you know, how you're approaching kind of that proactive approach to upgrade versus a reactive approach to upgrade. And that was actually a theme in the survey. You guys were really curious about how are we moving donors up the pyramid.
I'm not trying to monopolize this here. So one thing that we do that is really successful with Upgrade, all of our giving day matches, we try to have those be Upgrade people. So they're not necessarily, a lot of people I know go to like, they're really well-known people to sponsor their matches. But we try to go to people, I have a list that I manage of people who give from 250 to $9.99. So, you know, the 250 people, we ask them if they want to do a $500 challenge match for their chapter. The people who are giving from 500 to 9.99, we ask them if they want to do a $1,000 challenge match for their chapter. And we upgrade a lot of people through the year like that. And then, as you guys all know, after you have someone giving at that $1,000 level, they're more likely to maintain at that $1,000 level. So that's kind of how we go about a lot of upgrades per year. And then I also do, at the end of the year, I have like 4 sets of emails that go out. So one is like, oh, you're so close to being at that $1,000 level. And I send it personally from my email address. It's not from the Phi Delta Theta Foundation. It's from me, just trying to make that personal ask, get a ton of upgrades through that. And then we also do like society upgrades. So, hey, you're about to hit your next giving society, and that's a huge one. But then we also, just so you guys know, started a consecutive givers society, which is hard to do if your data is junk, but it's really been so beneficial for us. And last year I did an email and some people were like, this is really brazen. And other people were like, oh, thanks for letting me know, because the title was literally like, your membership is about to lapse. Mm-hmm. And so I sent it like in November of last year. I was like, your membership's about to lapse. And people were like, my membership in Phi Delta Theta, and they read the email, you know what I mean? So it was a really good way to just get people on that same thing. But in those emails, I included more than what they had given the previous year. So even though they had been giving forever, I just like upgraded everybody by like doubling essentially up to 1,000. If they were trustees roundtable, which is our $1,000, I just let them stay at that. But if they were like at 25, I asked them for 50 in that email. If they were at 50, I asked them for 100. So anyways, those also went over really well for us, just to getting people up a little bit.
I love that, Katie. I should be doing more of that by email. We do have a very strong program with our direct mail, though, where we do that. And in fact, we go back to donors who've already given in the fiscal year and ask for a second gift, and, you know, definitely say, you know, you are this close to reaching, yes, our mid-level or our leadership annual giving level. And we do get a lot of second gifts. And, you know, we get donors who will, you know, kind of circle that and send it in with their gift, or, you know, that, and we also put on the reply form, you know, you're X dollars away from reaching the next cumulative lifetime giving level. You know, they'll say, you know, making this gift, you know, so that I can be in the president's circle or whatnot. So very effective. And thank you. I've taken a lot of notes about some of the, right, not just live bunds, but we're really putting an emphasis on consecutive year giving. And I don't have any data to share with this team right now because we're just launching into it, but we're going to do multi-year commitments this fiscal year with our leadership annual donors. And so hopefully I'll have some good data by this time next year. But yeah, consecutive year giving is absolutely huge for a lot of reasons. I mean, you know, for budgeting and knowing what, you know, you can plan on for income, but just keeping them more in the fold overall.
I love that, Laurel. Are you guys going to ask for those multi-year commitments on your like normal solicitations that people can make those pledges?
We are. It's called our Iris Circle. We have our Iris Circle, our donors who give 1,000 or more in the fiscal year, and about 90% of those gifts come in through our annual fund. So it's kind of the natural channel and the way to ask. So we're going to build it into our kickoff and make that packaging a little bit special. And then we will certainly be doing follow-up, you know, by phone, email, maybe Zoom. I mean, Lindsay and our other advancement officers will be a big part of that if some of those donors fall into any of our portfolios.
Good. Anybody else doing anything to proactively kind of engage people or drive them up the pyramid from an upgrade perspective that you'd want to share? Or to share what data maybe you're leveraging to help make those decisions? I'm assuming everybody's using first party data, so data that you already have. How many people are using second or third party data? And if so, what are the key things that you're looking at? Just curious.
I would say our second party data is we use donor search as kind of a wealth screening engine. And I think we're doing a little bit of prospecting that way. For some of our donors that have a higher wealth, excuse me, not wealth engine score, a donor search score, I build them into our higher level donor segmented audiences in the direct mail. But I know that Lindsay could probably speak to a little bit more how we're using that data, I think, for other fundraising initiatives. Not to put you on the spot, Lindsay.
No, that's fine. Just happy to share a little bit when going on donor visits, of course, and planning out trips for the various areas that we're meeting with donors either virtually or in person. We utilize that data to just help us prospect. I mean, that's really the main way that we have been using the donor search data.
I would, that's great. I would maybe recommend that take a look at not only their wealth and the scores they get you, because I've used donor search, it's a great tool, but also their overall giving and affinities, right? So you can uncover where else they're giving and what type of causes are they giving to. That can really bolster the potential of a prospect, right? If you see that they're giving to mainly higher ed and okay, well, this is our focus. Or if you see that they're giving to a lot of healthcare or animal welfare, maybe that is their priority. So just something that kind of help you further refine who those prospects are.
Does anyone have an sorry.
Go ahead. I was just asking if anybody else had anything.
I was just going to ask if anyone had an internal affinity scoring system that they were using or a platform in Greek life.
We use a wealth engine just for basic capacity information. I think our data is I kind of hold on that, but we're building a Pardot, Salesforce Pardot lead scoring based on the roles that they have, and then the engagement that they take with our messaging and on our website. We're building that into our member a portal, so planning on being able to use that to maybe send a drip the program when they've been particularly engaged with our content in general about the fraternity. So yes, the Pardot's great. It's basically the marketing clone of Salesforce. So
we're at 7 minutes. Just want to call that out. So
Any other ideas you guys want to put on the table? We might want to put Ryan on the spot for a moment. If not, we are doing some work a little bit in the Greek space where we're solving some of these challenges around who should we upgrade, what data should we be looking at, who could be a good sustainer candidate, who's new to my file, to solve some of that retention that we were talking about, and what kind of strategies do we want to impart. Ryan, do you want to give kind of any overview or color commentary on the key things that we're looking at?
Yeah, so we're working with a few Greek organizations, and as I'd mentioned a few minutes earlier, really the influx of newer donors, understanding who they are, to help determine, all right, are there prospects there? Also, what's the reality of renewing, an adequate or respectable rate, whatever your retention rate is it 40, 50% higher? Just making, kind of understanding who those people are. And then also one thing that I've been doing is working to create sustainer candidates with an organization called Alpha Chi Omega. They had a lot of new donors, and they are looking to strengthen their retention. Best way to increase retention is get people giving on a monthly basis, right? Set it and forget it. So we're working with them to do that. And then lastly, alumna, converting them to ongoing donors, recognizing who in their file that's not giving to them outside of maybe membership costs is actively giving elsewhere, actively giving to similar organizations, whether it's in the higher ed space, and then going after them with a hard ask. You know, if they are philanthropic, they care about you, they should be supporting you. They have a share of wallet available to them. So those are just a few of the things that we've been working on with some similar organizations to you all.
And I know it's not Greek or fundraising, but Houston SPA story, Ryan, is similar to that. And kind of what I was alluding to earlier was we were able to recognize folks that would respond to phone and email, but not necessarily mail. And you were able to walk them through how to create custom ask amounts. And I think there's 5 gifts that have closed now at 100,000 each. Is that?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is an outlier, so, but it does.
I just got to bring it up because it's a cool story. And
we have, if you guys are interested, we have a lot of great case studies on our website about people using our own platform, but we do have channel preferences. We understand where people are transacting, and that really speaks to where they're living too. So if I'm purchasing things on Amazon Prime all the time, but I never do anything through the mail, I'm probably going to see my email in my inbox. And so just getting to be that where they, on their terms, the channel they prefer, opens you up to a greater likelihood of responding. So that's why I was talking about channel preference earlier. You can begin by looking at your own file. You can also use solutions like ours, and there might be another one on the market, I don't know, but really recognizing where their channel is and just giving yourself that chance that they're going to see you can really have some dramatic results. We've increased phone connection rates by 40% with a post-call average gift going up 35%. And you think about that, getting people on the phone is difficult. Like landlines are non-existent. And so helping increase that connection rate by 40% was significant. And then Daniel, referring to Houston SPCA and Animal Welfare Shop, we identified their major gift prospects that were on file and that had a preference for email, and their director of leadership gifts made basically a monthly personal email she would send out. She did it in batch through Razor's Edge, but it was coming from her, just providing updates, not almost like a real brief newsletter. And they received a $100,000 gift the first email. They've received 5 over the course of 4 months towards the end of the year. And these were people that had never given over like $2,000 a year. But we looked at all the insights on them and, made sure we looked at the ones that would respond to an email, that preferred digital. And they had a lot of great, those are just the highlights, but they had a lot of great engagement from people saying, thank you for sharing. So she actually connected with a lot more people too.
Yeah, and the $500,000, 5 gifts wasn't the point. The point was to be more human and to just know what preferences your donors prefer and to try to meet them there and to try to find out where they're already interacting. And so we're doing a lot of work in that area. So definitely would recommend as you look at year end to begin to think about that for sure.
That's a great point, Daniel. I would just say before we jump off here, the commercial space, they offer us as consumers things personalized. We are used to that. So don't be scared to use data to create a donor experience that's more personalized for your constituents. That's something that we're all on this call are used to today, whether it's coming from, our favorite retailers or, coffee shops. Those are things that are going on. And so I think it's important for the nonprofit space to recognize that and catch up, so to speak.
I like to say, show me, you know me, right? As you're reaching out, show them that you know them, and they're more likely to respond. We all get canned messages all the time, right? And we recognize it. So the more personal, hyper personal, I would say you can be, the better. We have 1 minute.
And don't be afraid to ask. I think that was said at the very beginning of our call.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think several of you said it. Don't be afraid to ask. Well, thank you guys.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Daniel.
I was just saying, has this been helpful for everybody? Has this been a nice little connection? And as you're in your summer days and looking at, gearing up for year end, we were exploring maybe doing another one of these, maybe there's a lot of folks that we didn't really pick the timing right. We were trying to work in our team and stuff. So a lot of folks couldn't make it. They're on vacation this week. But they were like, hey, please let me know about the next one. Is this being recorded? So it is being recorded. We will share it out. We'll edit it down, and we'll get that. Daniel Garza will get that to you just to make sure there's nothing you share that, you know, we don't want out there in the world. But yeah, we'll, if you guys see some head shaking, if you're open to another one, we might be try to make this somewhat of a regular thing. I'm not sure what the format will be as far as like the timing. But yeah, we're open to it if you all are. Maybe we'll send out a survey, Daniel, after this and just get some feedback and see what folks think. Well, thank you again for being here. And we are happy to continue the conversation. If there's anything we can do, we're a full service agency, plus we do a ton of work in analytics with augmented and artificial intelligence. So if we could ever help you, we'll probably be reaching out with some information after this. We'd be happy to jump on a no pressure call, just see if we might be a fit or at least point you in the right direction. All right, well, y'all enjoy the rest of your day. See ya.
Take care now. Bye now.